comprehensible for grade level educational student like me. It's yeah, yeah. I feel that, but it takes a while. I mean, I guess it's an experience, right?
There's a lot of love for false graph.
That's Mitch's girlfriend, actually. Yeah, you're talking about.
We love that case here.
Yeah,
lots of love in here for that case.
I mean, there's a reason they have withstood the time, right?
Exactly.
The test of time. So
yeah, for torture purposes.
And so where all did you apply to law school, and kind of what was your process for deciding that you'd go to the University of Minnesota?
Yeah, one major factor was that I lived in the Twin Cities. I had a really great experience. I made a lot of friends. This is a pretty controversial opinion among people who are not Minnesotans. Minnesota Nice has two different faces to it. One is the way I saw it was very welcoming, friendly people. For others, especially folks who are Americans but not Minnesotans, Minnesota Nice could be a passive-aggressive thing. Unless you are one among us or married to one among us, you will always be a non-Minnesotan kind of thing. But for me, I'm not from here. I don't have a dog in this fight. I just felt warmth all 2-3 years. I made wonderful friends. I come from a climate which is pretty boring. 10 months of summer, 2 months of erratic monsoons.
Oh yeah, sounds awful.
I love the winter. I love the winter. I look forward to winter every single year because
this is your favorite time of the year, right?
Yeah, because I feel like come spring or summer, I feel like I've worked for my summer. I've put my effort into it. I deserve summer now. So, I mean...
It's that sadomasochism that really gets us all through law school, too.
Definitely a theme, yeah.
Yeah, and also, apart from that Minnesota factor, it's a state school. I have that affiliation to public schools, where taxpayers fund it. So compared to the other private schools, can I name drop, or it's not a diss per se, but when I visited Emory, there was this kind of a unique pride about them being a private school, which I could not comprehend. I mean, you can have pride in your school, but not because it's a private school. I mean, I didn't spend enough time to understand the source of that pride, but they were just proud that they were a private school. So public school was the second factor for me. And also, for someone, I was giving up a lot of opportunity costs. I also thought practically speaking, I cannot take in a lot of debt because post-graduation, I can work in the U.S. only if I get sponsorship. Mm-hmm. And that sponsorship factor is not super easy to come by in legal field. Mm-hmm. It was okay when I was a super technical person, right? Because
everyone needs tech support,
right?
Yeah.
Well, especially when you get into the big four consulting firms, there you can easily get. I mean, obviously not easily, but if you apply there and you're a great candidate, they'll accept you regardless of whether you're an international student or not.
Yeah, because from a U.S. context, the demand is higher than the supply. American kids. Maybe now things are changing with the STEM programs in high schools and stuff, and encouraging folks from underrepresented communities and women to apply for these STEM programs and more. But even now, Deloitte and Ernst & Young, if they want to hire an American, they cannot. The demand cannot be met by the current supply. So they need folks from outside, who can do it, and South Asians and East Asians are perfect candidates for that.
And so do you think you're going to go into patent law or some other kind of field where you can use your technology background as well?
Not patent law, because for some reason I'm just not super interested in it, but maybe something related to litigation. So my primary goal is to find an employer who can sponsor it. and over the next 2 or 3 years, find out what skills are being, in demand, and develop those skills outside of patent law. Some kind of corporate transactional work, M&A, or any other kind of litigation skills.
Okay.
Yeah, that it is really interesting. I hadn't really thought about, but we have several JD students, and I was just talking to my partner in insurance clinic is from China, and she came home for Thanksgiving with me, and we were talking about it, and she's having the same sort of struggle like that. There's a lot of students who are concerned about whether they're going to be able to stay in the U.S. after graduation because the sponsorships in the legal field are much more difficult to get, and employers don't really want to sponsor someone that's not going to work for them long term, or have some other sort of benefit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just cost. I mean, if you're a mid-sized company or even a small company, I mean, there's no way you're going to spend the extra amount of money to try and sponsor them. It's just kind of cost prohibitive, so they just have to pass. I know when I got out of grad school. I mean, we probably a quarter to a third of our class were international students, and if you didn't get into one of the big four accounting firms right out of grad school, I mean, it was tough. You only could pick between a couple very large companies that were willing to do it.
So if you were to say, I mean, for purposes, if you didn't get a sponsorship and you had to go back to India, would this law degree be super beneficial in India? I mean, would you be considered like the top dog?
Yeah, absolutely. I considered all those things before I decided I'll get a JD because one, India is also a common law system, from the old colonial British rule. So common law system, it's applicable, and if you have a JD from the U.S. and from a top, however you define top law school is, if you have one from top law school, definitely it plays a huge role in terms of employment, but they would also require like some kind of practice experience. Like it's one thing coming right out of JD or coming with at least 2 or 3 years of corporate America experience, but yeah, it'll definitely play a role. But if that is a situation, it'll be kind of liberating for me because I would just jump into public service because one of the reasons why I even chose Minnesota was this realization of about sponsorship came late to me. So I was like, I really wanted to go into like international human rights kind of thing, maybe get a big law firm job, but within the international division or something like that, so you could do some international immigration work or human rights work, pro bono arm of it.
Right. For example, like Dorsey and Whitney has law offices in India for kind of the transactional stuff that you're talking about. So they'd probably, that
is definitely an option to explore. But yeah, I mean, I would just like go home and then, I think just in the last decade, the concept of bar exam has come to India. Before that, you could just get a LLB. It's not a JD there. It's a bachelor's program, right? LLB. And then you could just start practicing. You find a senior lawyer who's ready to take you in. You become a quote unquote junior lawyer for 10 years, chase ambulances, make money, and and then become your own senior lawyer with 5 other people. So that's how it used to work. But since 2010, they've introduced something called the All India Bar Examination. It's super interesting that there are no state bar examinations. There is no California, New York to give headaches to.
So it's a federal bar.
Kind of the federal bar.
That
they call it the
nice.
central government. One common UBE kind of thing, but for the entire country. So
is it notoriously difficult?
I don't really know because we just have 7 years of data to go by. So I guess maybe in a couple years, I should be able to opine on it personally, I guess, if things don't go the way I expect it to here in the U.S. But yeah.
And so how do you feel law school is different being an international student compared to the domestic students that you see? What are some of the biggest differences you think there are?
The obvious challenge is learning in English, right? So I think in my native tongue. Even when I'm speaking to you right now, my thoughts originate in Tamil. and I'm doing these nanosecond translations as I speak, and as you speak, I hear, I translate it back and put it back. So when you read these voluminous material, worse, on a bad day, they give you like 50 pages of worth of con law reading. Well, people put in an effort. There's a reason why people are in law school. They're hard workers. They're driven. They have initiative, but it just takes time. Time is a huge factor. If you have say 6 quality hours between 5 p.m. And then next morning 8 a.m. before your classes begin, if you have like 6 quality hours, maybe a native speaker can accomplish. If they accomplish 90% of the 100%, I can do 40 or 50. So I would have to compromise on sleep, on exercise, on meditation, or cooking, on stuff like that. So that is as a practical matter, there's that concern, right?
Right.
So
as a practical matter, exercise goes right out the window. That's out there. So.
Yeah, I mean,
and it shows too. So,
this is one day, and over 15 or 16 weeks, it tends to compound, and it could have an effect on your mental and physical health, your emotional health, and you cut down on your social time. If you want to go check out Holly Dazzle, you cannot, and stuff like that. So as a practical matter, I said, that is one difference. The other difference is, it's just a cultural differences in terms of how people approach camaraderie and friendship. There's a learning curve. I mean, if you were to go to Germany, Deutschland, there's going to be a learning curve for you. It's not unique to America. It's part of quote unquote immigrant life, if you will. So I would say, just the idea of like making friends, making relationships, you have to understand how things work here, how dynamics work, understand that, because the friendships in India, they are a little different, and also law school being a super professional school, unlike college, there are other differences as well. People tend to be a little more mature and independent and have their own idea of like how they want to go about doing law school.
When you said mature, Anthony gave me a look like insinuating
we're all like,
something.
At least for the most part.
Has there been anything strange within the U.S. laws that you have seen? Because you've taken con law already. The torts class, we just talked about Paul's graph. Is there anything that just sticks out to you as like, wow, that is a weird U.S. law, or something's really off about that ruling?
Oh wow! Get ready for a huge rant, guys. I've talked about this to my study group. It's the quote unquote objective nature of the judges and justices, especially when it comes to political issues. The process of appointing justices in the U.S. is very unique. They are political appointees. I just cannot wrap that idea around my head. For folks who are born and raised here, that's the way system has always been. Right? So some people may not question it, but the idea that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States is a political appointee appointed by the president of one political party is one, mind-boggling, and number two,
Here.
And number two, once that process is complete, whether someone got appointed or someone got borked, it moves on to being completely, at least apparently, a non-partisan person. Meaning, right after that moment, they what they're telling is there's a switch that's turned off where you stop being political.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the reason why someone would even be appointed these days is because of not just their judicial philosophy, but by